I bet if you sat down for only a minute and reflected, you could identify a turning point in your career, or life rather. Something happened that changed everything for you. Maybe it was a personal experience, a life loss, a change in how you see the world. Maybe it was a professional one. It was a career opportunity or a career loss. Maybe it was a choice that you made. Either way, it turned your life upside down. And while it may sound like more fun to run away from those times, it's best to trudge through them. And Mike Amato is proof of that. Mike started a job that came with great opportunities, including a side dish of a major crisis. What could have derailed his career, however, turned out to be a pivotal peak of it, empowering him to empower others in ways he hadn't ever dreamed possible. Mike Amato and I had the opportunity to work together on his book, The Better Way to Win, and I'm elated to invite you into a chat we had about what emPact is all about, especially when the situation is less than ideal. Instead of seeing lemons, Mike found a way to make sweet, sweet lemonade. Ready to learn from Mike? Well, let's dive in. Hey, I'm Stephanie Feger, and Empower is my middle name. Well, not really, but it should be. I believe that empowered people empower people, and I'm obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies and tactics to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it, want it, and here's the kicker, will buy it. I'm the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group and the author of 3 books myself, including my newest book, Make Your Author Impact. Sell more books, increase your reach, and achieve your why. I've been called to merge my love for reading books, writing books, and marketing books to help nonfiction authors like you with laser-focused strategies and tactics to write books that sell, promote books to those who need and want them most, and build meaningful businesses from empowering messages. Think of this podcast as your one-stop shop for marketing insights from an author who has been there, done that, and understands exactly where you are, because guess what? I have and I do. So get your pens ready because I'm ready to empower you. This is the Empowered Author Podcast. Hey, Mike, I am so glad you are here today and a part of the Empowered Author Podcast. In fact, when we started working together, very quickly, I was like, Mike and I are going to have fun on a podcast episode one day because we have a lot of fun chatting and just really understand each other at a really deep level. So I'm so glad to have had the chance to work with you, but also to have you be a part of the podcast. Your message is amazing, and I know that what you're doing is amazing and impactful as well. So welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm glad that at long last our podcast has come up. I'm excited.
Me too. Me too. So you and I had the chance to work on several things as it pertained to your book, but I don't want to give away all the goods. I want you to. So tell everybody that's listening and watching today a little bit about you and about your story, which is really interesting to me, and how all of
Thank you.
that kind of became a thread to tie together so that you could help others make an impact in their lives, and how I would put it, in probably some of the hardest but most pivotal and critical times of their lives. So tell us a little bit, Mike.
Certainly. Thanks, Stephanie. My executive career, my former life, I was an executive in banking, in the banking business. Specifically, my last executive job was the head of Barclays branch network from London, but in Africa, Middle East, Europe, and the UK. During that time I was there, it was incredibly challenging time. And right after I got there, we knew we kind of had some issues culturally
Yeah.
and with the bank. And then the BBC had hired reporters. They put them into our business and recorded everything and put Barclays on national TV saying, we're guilty of mis-selling and treating customers poorly. You
Ugh.
know, yes, is right. Just like, oh boy, I thought my career was over. And
I mean, Mike, I come from a background of PR, and so I can only imagine the PR professionals at at your company, because I'm sitting here thinking that type of PR is crisis communication, and it is not fun.
it is not fun. It is not fun at all. And you're thinking everything's. I'm going to be. I just had arrived from Seattle, where I worked for a bank in the United States, to London. I thought, oh boy, I'm on a plane going back. They're going to fire me. What happened, and this is kind of to your point about messages for life, is that what happened is we launched a transformation plan that totally changed the culture of the bank. So we changed the foundation, the ecosystem. It's an ecosystem that informs
Yeah.
behaviors. So we were able to convince the board and the global heads of the business that if we say this is just guilty of bad behaviors and we have a few sacrificial lambs, we'll repeat the problems over and over again. So
Yep.
fundamentally rewiring the organization from a culture standpoint inside out had dramatic effects. And so in my book, I describe the impact on business performance, employee engagement, customer satisfaction, and profitability. So we describe all those things. So during the pandemic, following that, I was on the board of a couple of banks, Santander, the big Spanish bank, and then digital startup bank. And I was on the boards, and I was just, sort of not totally satisfied as a board member. The impact that I wanted to have was
Mm-hmm.
just not the same as when I was running the business. So I started thinking about this. Said, this is an unusual story, and the transformation with 30,000 people, and the results that I share in the book it just seemed important to me. So I
Yeah.
started to say, let's write a book. And the idea, to your point about impact, is whenever we think about what we want, a
Mm-hmm.
book, a story, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to be
Yeah.
successful. When you get down and say, well, why do you want those things? And people often pause and say, I'm not sure why. And I
Mm-hmm.
pause myself. And the answer to me largely is impact. When people say I want to give something back, they mean I want to have impact. So
Yeah.
I want to have impact and started sharing this book, writing this book. Holy cow, you know the process of writing the book. I won't go deep into it now because I
Oh.
imagine you have questions, but and then later on I met you and you kind of saved me from things I had no idea I was heading into. So there.
Well, I tell people all the time, Mike, if you can't figure out how to check out at the grocery store, something you should probably do weekly, or someone in your life should, then shame on you. Like, we've got bigger problems, but not knowing how to navigate the book process. I mean, many people do that only once in their life, right? So I would never expect people to know it all, and it evolves every other day. So unless you live in the industry and roll around in it and on the daily, you're not going to know. So I think it's totally okay that you're like, I mean, because it's overwhelming and it's stressful. And all you wanted to do when you write a book is you want to make an impact with, you want to share it with someone. You want to, you don't want to hold or hoard something that was important and life changing or game changing or business changing to yourself. You want to help people, but the process to get from point A to point B can be a bit cumbersome. I know. I know.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And you say I'm going to write a book. Ha ha ha. First of all, how to do it, and then
Yeah.
what do you do, and then how do you make it relevant? How do you make it interesting? So there's all of that.
Yeah.
Then how do you bring it to life? Well, there's 20 things, writing a book, or actually let's call it publishing a book.
True.
It's not like if somebody gave you a list of all the things you need to do, you'd never do it. If you really did, so
Right.
it's
You wouldn't.
you wouldn't. So it's like
Nope.
walking down a hallway, but we're going to turn on the lights only as you need to know. So it's like, okay, I wrote my book. I'm ready to publish it. No.
Mike, that makes me think of a scary movie. The scary movies where it's
Yeah.
dark and then like it just maybe that's what the alignment is. It's like a scary movie and we don't tell you the next step because we're afraid you're going to run away.
Yeah, exactly. And then you finally get the
Yeah.
book printed, finally get everything published. It's got the ISDN numbers from Library of Congress, all these things I had no
All the
idea I
things.
needed. I'm holding, well, now what?
Yeah,
And
now what?
so the process for the now what, getting into people's hands, all these things that need to happen to make sure that you can promote it, sell it, get the message out there
Yeah.
is just, it goes on and on and on.
Daunting.
So um, that,
Yeah.
that's how I began to think about writing a book. That's my story, and there's an evolution in the story as the book came out. But
Yeah.
again, that's where you came into the dark hallway and said, "Follow me, Mike."
Follow me with your eyes kind of squinted. I'll help you
Yeah.
to the other side. So I want to, your book, I want to go back to it because
Okay.
I think it's a beautiful gem in the hidden amongst, what in a leadership space that's broad. And so I want those listening to know, I mean, I really, really love this book. The Better Way to Win is really good. But one of my favorite parts that you and I talked about, and I think it was one of the key takeaways I left with is, and I don't know that you know this about me. Maybe we talked about it or not. I don't remember. I am a person who is very self motivated, but I don't like competition. And I also was never good at sports, Mike, because I'm left handed and my parents didn't have a clue what to do with left handed
Hmm.
people. And so they tried to get me to do right handed stuff before they found out I was left handed. Anyways, so I'm not good at sport. Moral of the story. I'm not good at sports, which means this understanding of like a winning and losing thing was never really baked into me, except for me winning and losing amongst myself. So this high level of perfectionism and this charge to do better wasn't ever on my side to do better in above somebody else. Okay. You're like, why is she telling you all this? This is one of the key things I loved about your book. When I think of business and leadership, and when I got into it, I started to realize that, moving up the ladder means you have to step over somebody sometimes, right? Like
Mhm.
that there is a competition, and it doesn't have to be, but there is in a lot of the corporate space. But your book wasn't that. And so when I hear the word win in business, many times I find myself sitting at, oh, well, that means the business is profitable. Or that means that as a leader, you climbed the ranks, and who did you step on to get there? That is not your book. We walked away and
Nope.
I was like, no, 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 no. What was beautiful about your message is it's not just the better way to win. It's the better way to win, win, win. Like everybody wins. Everybody can cross the finish line. Like everyone can be first. It doesn't have to be one person. In
Yep.
fact, it won't be successful if it is one person. And it was the implosion that you experienced with BBC. I would have PTSD after that, Mike, if I were you. But it wasn't. If it that could have been a negative defining moment in your career and the company's career, but when the choice is made for greater good and greater change, everyone can grow and everyone can win. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I loved that, but I want to make sure that I'm sure there's more to the story there that you probably want to highlight.
Thank you. And thanks for framing that up so well. I point to my hair because before this crisis, I had hair. So, um, it's
Well, hey, before the pandemic, I didn't have gray, so I feel
there
you
you go.
there.
So,
Love it.
so what you described is a misunderstanding, I think, about business and about winning.
Yeah.
The idea that you have to beat somebody to win is a scarcity mindset. There's only
Yeah.
so many resources, only so many winners, and there's going to be, for every winner, there's a loser, or there's a batch of losers. So that scarcity mindset drives scarcity behavior. And the notion of this, and you picked up on it exactly. I remember the day you picked up on it, this win, win, win. The notion is actually my subtitle of my book is Leading in a Time of Crisis. It was going to be putting people over profits to get more
Mm.
profits. And you can see it's pretty choppy.
Mm.
But the point of it is that organizations have to have, they have several stakeholders that they need to produce results for.
Mhm.
There's customers, of course. There's employees, colleagues. There's the capital markets, stockholders.
Yep.
There's the communities that businesses purportedly serve. There might even be regulators. So you need to produce a positive outcome for all of those. You can't do that with the scarcity mindset. Scarcity mindset, we're going to make employees happy at the cost of
Yes.
customers. We're make
Right.
customers happy at the cost of financials. And the better way to win is get rid of the scarcity mindset
Yeah.
and think about winning as saying, how do we succeed in every one of those relationships that are so important to a business?
Hmm.
And there's the playbook for doing it is in the book.
Yeah.
We did it. One little metric that I love to share is that employee engagement when I got to Barclays was 64%. Now, what does that mean? Well, all I could tell you is the Hay Group measured us plus other large banks around the world. Global high performing norm was 86%. So
Oh, wow.
64% was the lowest I'd
I
seen
was
of any
thinking
bank anywhere.
64 was decent.
Oh, no,
No.
it's actually
No.
very, very poor. In fact,
Mm.
only 72% of the employees, my team was 30,000 people, and only 72% of them even bothered to fill out the survey when they sent it in.
Oh
So
my
not only were they
gosh.
disengaged, but they weren't even engaged in filling out the survey about their lack of engagement.
Mm.
So as we did this transformation and we focused on a few key outcomes, and again, the process is in the book, the
Yeah.
recipe for doing this. What happened was employee engagement went from 64% in less than 18 months, which sounds like forever, but in corporate life,
No,
it's
but in
nothing.
business time, that's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And so 30,000 people, 18 months later, 92%. From 64 to 92% engagement, we had 98% completion of the survey. And so now we're the top performing, not only bank in the world, it's the top
Wow.
performing retailer in the world. So
Wow.
that's a phenomenal change
Wow.
for one key stakeholder. And guess what happened to customer service?
Well,
Guess what
right.
happened to product innovation? Guess what happened to profitability? So And I
Yeah.
get deeper into this, but you get my point. That is win, win, win. It was something that
Hmm.
you coined, and I loved it. The better way to win: win for customers, win for shareholders, and win for employees. And that's the better way to win. And I proved it.
You absolutely did. I go back to, and this has been an example in my own life. And so my life is very, but my crises were small compared to what you walked into. But I have found that when you are uncomfortable, when change happens and you are uncomfortable, that is where innovation lies. Like that's where it is a catalyst and a breeding, ground. I suspect if BBC hadn't done, even though many people, and you probably prayed that that wouldn't have happened, right? If you go
Yeah.
back and like have fixed that, you would have. But I have a feeling without that, they would not have been where they are. I know without when I was impacted by a corporate layoff, I would not be where I'm at. Anytime that I come across something that I'm like, oh, huh, okay, that was harder, or I didn't like that. I get to choose, just like you got to choose as a leader in that space, and the company gets to choose. I get to choose. Am I going to stop and throw a temper tantrum? Maybe for like 5 minutes, you could do that, right? But then what are you going to do on the other side of it? And so I have found when I get comfortable, Mike, I don't like it now. Now I prefer to be a bit uncomfortable because I grow personally and professionally better when I can observe things that like are just not right. So I'm curious. I mean, I know you don't want to live through that again, I'm sure, but I don't know that I bet the bank wouldn't be where it is today without that experience.
Boy, 100%.
Yeah,
I would never have wanted to happen, but I'll tell you, it was the greatest
absolutely.
gift I've ever received. Like all challenges in our lives, I'm an executive mentor, so I do keynote speaking on this
Mhm.
topic, relevant leadership and leading in crisis. But I'm also a mentor to executives, senior managers, even salespeople. I mean, it doesn't matter the role. The point is that I help people create a new outcome, create a new reality. And a lot of it's the same formula that worked for 30,000 people works for one.
Mhm.
And one of the key points is to say, how do we take a challenge and how do you turn it into something that's actually a gift? And
Yeah.
the mindset that has to accompany that is this. And before I take on a client, I always ask this question. It is your desire to change, which is typically caused by discomfort,
Mhm.
greater than your attachment to the circumstances that led to the discomfort? In other words,
Hmm.
if I want to lose weight, let's say I was a weight coach. If I wanted to lose
Yes.
weight, and if my desire to lose weight is less than my desire to keep my lifestyle the same way, I couldn't help
It's
that
not gonna
person.
it won't yeah.
So when I
Ooh,
talk to leaders and say, how intense is your desire? Because it's crucial that it's
yeah.
greater than
Yeah.
retaining the circumstances. So a negative way that comes out is when I say, here's a concept, and the leader says, oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, I remember I saw that one time in my career. Oh, yeah, I've done that. You get three butt mics. And that's a butt mic, which says,
Mm,
I'm going to nod and lean, but I'm not going to move my feet. I'm not going to change.
mm.
You don't change, you can't change. You can't um, go to where you think you want to go. So your point
Ooh,
is a great one in that these crises are gifts, and experience
yeah.
creates wisdom. And wisdom is when we understand, wow, I
Yeah.
sure wish that hadn't happened, but it made a burning platform from which I wanted to evolve away from, which created enormous growth.
On every front. And I think you can look at that personally and professionally. The first chapter in my first book is around a child loss. And
Mm.
that is an experience. I tell people it's a club you don't want to be a part of, but I'm grateful that I'm on the other side and not grateful that it happened, but grateful that I understand at a level that I do because it made me a better mom, right? Like now I am confident that I am a different mom because of what I experienced.
Mm.
Hands down. Same thing in losing a job. Like I want it. I mean, actually I did kind of want that one. That was I was praying for that. Because I wouldn't have left. I was planning on retiring there. So I am grateful. But still, I mean, it was traumatic. I was an equal financial contributor in my family. And what do you do when you have a whole family to feed and half the income? But I look back and if I hadn't, where would I have been? And so what I love about change and challenge for me and for I'm sure your clients and the people is the more that you have it, the better you get at it. The better you get at seeing it and the better you get at compartmentalizing some of the feelings you have around it and seeing it as an opportunity or a gift, I do think it is. Because if things are just always going smoothly, I think our brain pathways create our brain create pathways to make life easy. And so when things are easy, it will stay there. And even if you want to do better, it'll be harder for you to be able to see that opportunity. I love that you ask your clients that, because I think you're spot on at the fact of desire. And I actually feel that way with the clients I work with. I might steal that, Mike. I might have to ask people, is your desire to sell this book bigger than whatever? Because the point is you have to have a mindset is so important, but it has to be something that you're willing to go deeper in and to try and to work from. And not everybody's open to it. And on the flip side, many that aren't open will then critique the fact that they haven't made the change and tried to point fingers or poke holes when really they're a part of it. Like you're a big piece of that puzzle.
Massive. There's an old joke. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is only takes one, but that light bulb really needs to change, want to
Oh,
change.
I
So,
like that. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. That's a really good one, but it's totally true. It's totally true. Well, and speaking about wanting to sell books and that whole process, we had the chance to work together and have help you and really starting to visualize that this book has such potential, and how are you going to use it in your business? And not just that it has potential, it is full of it, and people need to find it, and how do they find it and all that stuff. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, we've talked about impact in businesses, but let's talk about the author's impact. What is that like for you, and what is it like to collaborate with people like us to bring that impact to life?
okay. So great question. First of all, I always start with things first, like a story, beginning and middle and an end. And the beginning
I
of
love
this
it.
one is
You're an author, that's allowed.
I'm an author. I am an author.
You
Um,
are.
beginning is that I cannot coach myself. I don't know
Mm.
why. If you asked me, I have a client who's a COO of a cryptocurrency exchange in Vienna. Okay, and I can give thoughts, advice, help that person through some really tough times, obviously, right now. And yet
Sure.
I can't hear my own voice. So
Nobody can, Mike. I can't either.
I'm so glad, because I thought it was
You're not
I'm missing
alone.
as part of my DNA was broken or something. But
No.
so the ability to talk to you and say, okay, so I have this book. And by the way, everything I've talked about to describe my backstory of the book is actually not where this impact is going. So I started a book to tell a story because I think it's interesting. I think there's a recipe for leading in a time of crisis. But by being able to work with you guys, you and your team, through this process, so many other insights came to mind. And one of the key ones is, so what do we do about this story? Why is the story relevant today? And when
Yeah.
we went back and forth and you challenged me with some ways of thinking about it, again, think about that story. What makes good social media management? What are good marketing tactics? What is my
Mhm.
branding all about? It's evolved to something much more powerful than, gee, I'm Mike Amato, I have this experience. It's now actually, when I do a keynote speech, I've got a big one coming in March, and it's going to start with, rarely in our time have leadership been so challenged across the board. We are leading in a time of crisis. And all this conversation about AI, just this past week, things are happening with AI that are challenging business leaders like never before. And they already lagged in terms of what the workforce needs and what the marketplace wants. And their definition of what their leadership role really is needs to be questioned. So I use
Mhm.
this experience for credibility, but what people need to do right now, and conversations with you really helped me understand, this is the what's in it for them. It's, I want them to question what their core responsibility as a leader. And I will tell
Yeah.
you, it's not managing numbers.
Mm.
Efficiency is not a strategy. And that's what
Mm.
most leaders do, is, well, we need to cut costs, we need to cut
Mm.
costs, we need to hit the numbers, we need to hit the numbers. I wish I could swear, but it's BS. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
The leader's job is to manage the ecosystem, not to manage the financial results. Their job is to manage the input,
Mm.
not the output. And
Mhm.
leaders need to understand this. And I don't mean to be
Oh, I
evangelical
think
about
it's
it,
good.
but I get excited about this because
Yeah.
most leaders in companies, and when I've done a lot of interviews, met a lot of people, most leaders in companies don't even understand their relevance has slipped away largely from them if they hold this old view of what leadership means. So you helped me because you heard me, you played it back for me, and it's like an aha moment when I said, this is bigger than Jen, Mike Amato, and I went through this experience.
You've hit the nail on the head that a lot of us think that we have a story, but we don't, we're too close to the story that we can't see
Hmm.
the legs of the story. And I remember in reading your book, which is the first step that I do when working with authors, it's really important to me to hear you. And I made notes, and we had a call, and I asked you some questions. I'm like, is this a part of you? And you're like, how did you know? I'm like, I just picked up on it. I'm like, have you considered that maybe we could go down this niche? And you're like, I never thought about that. Or what about this? And you're like, I didn't hear about, because we see us through a lens of us, meaning we know what happens inside our head that we don't tell people, or we know the insecurities. I'm not saying you have any, Mike, but I'm saying I have some. So we know what happens. You're like, me too. We know those. We know the imposter syndrome that we face. We know that we see people, we think, well, you should go to them, not me. Like, we know these things, but people have the opportunity, when we let them, in a honest way, to kind of reflect the mirror back and show us things we don't see in ourselves. I remember one of the first chats we had, and it was, I could almost see your brain explode, like almost. I've never been able to see it with a client virtually, but I was like, these eyes, you got real big, and you're like, I have never found somebody who can do for me what I've done for other people.
Thank you for saying that, because I was going to try to work that in, and I hadn't yet, because that's exactly the moment that I thought, this is what I was looking for, is
Yeah.
somebody who could hear me and play it back so I could hear myself. So thank you for
Yeah.
remembering that.
I'll never forget it. It was a mic drop, total pun intended, moment in my world, because just like you don't see it in yourself, I don't always see in myself those things either. And so for you to identify that you saw something of what I could do that you haven't found in many people or any, that meant a lot to me. But it was also really refreshing, because it meant that you are a coach, but you are a coach that knows the value of getting a coach or having a support person in place. And I wasn't open to that myself for a while, and I did get a business coach a couple of years ago. It was absolutely game changing for me. And there's this illusion that a coach only is like a cheerleader, like a rah rah shish kumbah kind of person, but not all coaches are like that. Many roll up their sleeves. I mean, our team does that, and gets in the weeds. But we also kind of help you look at a side of your life that you wouldn't think of, and help you consider things. So anyways, it was an honor to do that.
Ah.
And it meant the world to me. And I know I'll never forget when you said that. It might be like ingrained in my DNA now.
Well, thank you again. I loved it, and I loved. See, so early in my career as a financial advisor, and at first I was mildly effective because I was an offerer of premier financial products. Here's a range of
Ah,
stuff. Choose which one you
yeah,
want.
yeah.
And when I really evolved was when I became an advisor, a recommender. I could say,
Mhm.
based on, I had to listen a little bit, and I had to, so based on that, I see some options for you. And
Sure.
that's what people are looking for. And that's
Yeah.
where you've arrived in your business. Is you're not just offer services to help somebody, write, publish, promote, sell,
Right.
and talk about their work. You actually are able to move to that higher echelon of advisory role and
Mm.
say, based on my accumulated wisdom, you might want to turn this way and turn that way. And that's what makes you different than a coach. It makes you a mentor,
Yes.
an advisor. It's more than just a coach. So
Oh,
that's
thank
really
you.
what I loved. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because that is something, that's why I have to read the book, number one, because I
Yeah.
have to, and I know it sounds kooky when I say it, but like the book kind of tells me what we need to do with it. It kind of opens doors and gives me ideas. But I really appreciate you saying that, because I don't have a cookie cutter approach. I mean, I know what works. There's a method that I like to kind of guardrails, what I call it, to keep me in line. But I also know that there's not only one way to win. There's a better way, Mike, to win. No,
Hey.
there's not only one way to the
Hey.
finish line, right? Like, there's many different detours, and we can all get there. But I have found that to find the finish line where I know the author will get over it requires me to understand what the author's main goals are, what the author's willing to put into it time wise, specifically where they're wanting to take it. Like the end line, the finish line to me is honestly usually just the beginning of another journey, another mile hike, or what,
Yeah.
triathlon or whatever you want to call it. It's just the next phase. So I appreciate you noticing that, because I mean, I could say, well, Mike, you need to get Facebook ads and Amazon. I mean, I could go down a list, but I don't work that way. I would rather you say that's a waste. That's just gonna put, those things will put weight on your backpack and take it longer for you to get across the line. I totally played up that analogy, didn't I?
That's okay. But I'll tell you what's really important, and an insight as I'm listening to you speak about that, insight pops into my mind is this. When I write the book, it's like everything went into writing the book. And I have these two minds, and I can't think of the word when you've got disconnected
Mhm.
thoughts that are disconnected. And
Discombobulated.
discombobulated. But one was, all right, the book and the world's waiting for my book, and it'll just happen, and it'll be great.
Yeah.
On the other hand, my ego mind was my little inner risk manager saying, "You're not enough. It's not good enough. It's the story's not going to be. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to." So when a little small act you did at the very beginning was you read my book. That sounds like such a simple thing. I have to tell you, so many people have said, "Oh, Mike, you should write a book. I love it. I'll buy your book. I'll buy your book."
And they
And
don't.
I'll ask them, "Did you read the book?" No, they didn't read the book. So the fact that you actually read it's a small thing for you, huge for me, because it gave me such comfort that this might be a worthwhile thing that somebody might want to read. And then, of
Yeah.
course, I was happy when you said it was the best book you've ever read, and I'm the best writer I've ever. No, but
Oh.
that was just gravy.
You are. Many times when I read a book, I try really hard to hold myself back, Mike, because there are times that I'm like, if I had to come in early, I want to rewrite this section. And that's not why I read it, unless the author brings me in early, and then I'm happy to weigh in on that stuff. But very, very seldom do I read a book from cover to cover and not find anything, like any typos or anything that I would tweak. And so, I know the team that you worked with to bring your book to life, and
Yeah.
it's phenomenal work, and you're a testament to it. But I also have no poker face. See, I never, like, I wasn't good at sports, and I never gambled. So I have no poker face. So when I tell somebody how I feel about their book, like, I really feel it. And I really think that you have a message that is is really beautifully done. I mean, it's written in story, which makes hard topics easier to digest, and you feel like you're a part of it, and you walk away learning in the process. And so it does seem small to the naked eye. Like when I talk to people who might be interested in collaborating, and I tell them, like, the first thing I do is read your book, they're like, oh yeah, of course. And I'm like, no, I'm going to pause, because a lot of people in this industry do not, including publishers, including marketers, including everybody. A lot of people do not. It is so much easier for me to help you when I know you, and I can't know you until I read what you put your heart on paper. And so that is a very meaningful part of our process that might be overlooked to some, but I think it actually is the cornerstone of a differentiator.
It's huge because I appreciate the doctor asking me symptoms before they prescribe the medication. It'd be odd to
Thank
walk
you.
in and say, Mike, you look like you need this and this and this. Well, by reading the book, you got a chance to understand me, understand the message, and then your
Yeah.
comments were all relevant and informed. So your
Yeah.
recommendations were like a physician who has asked and done tests and found out what the
Mhm.
symptoms are, and then they come up with recommendations. So well done, you.
Thank you. And well done, you too.
Thank you.
Okay, last question for you. One piece of advice to somebody listening today who, I mean, we may have talked them out of writing, Mike. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I don't think so. When that book is stirring in you, even as much as you try to run away from it, it'll come out. Yes. But what would be a piece of advice you would give to somebody at any stage of the journey who is wanting to make a really big impact with their book? What would be something that you would share?
The desire to write the book has been greater than the desire to do nothing.
I love it.
Because
Yeah.
yes, we've talked about various challenging steps and
Yeah.
everything else. So number one, have the desire to write it because there's a story. So many people have something to say, and writing the book, you'll learn so much about yourself. I
Yeah.
confronted every ghost in my closet,
Mm.
every myth that my ego mind told myself. I had to confront it. And writing the book was cathartic in that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, get advice early on, get help early on. Yes, it's complex, and yes, you're navigating a road that seems to, so many steps along the way. Get help, because your job is to write the book. Experts' job is to help you bring it to life. Use them. In fact, Steph, if I'd met you a little bit earlier, there are things in the books that after we spoke, I would have changed. I think you were so kind to say there's nothing. But for me, I saw things, you know what?
Yeah.
If I'd spoken to you earlier, I might have changed this part of the book or this part of the message. So again, get help early, just because know what you're good at, and you're good at writing a book, and put all your effort into that. Think about what you're trying to do with that book and the relevance, and then get the right people to help you do it. Building that team to do that is just everything. So that's one bit of advice in 3 stages.
Oh, but it's good advice. Like, I wish I had that advice before I wrote my first book. I mean, I think it's phenomenal advice. And thank you for sharing it. Thank you for inviting myself and the team on your journey. And thank you for being a risk taker and not running away when crazy things happened at your employer, and you learned, and then you didn't hide it. You didn't hoard it. You shared. I know there's a lot of people who will be impacted in a beautiful way from it. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you. And by the way, something I didn't talk about this. Had I met you, had I been a little bit earlier in the process, you have the program, which is a intensive process of working together. It's called emPact program.
Yes, the author emPact. Yes, we spell impact weird over here, with an EM instead of an IM. But yes.
A lot of the things I'm talking about would have been more than twice as easy or half as hard had I gone through an intensive program like that with you and your team. So I would be a big fan of that, were I to do this again. Get in that early, because that hall lights coming on would have been totally different with an intensive. So I want to make sure I said that to you.
Thank you. Well, I might have to write a book about Waverly Hills Cemetery or Sanctuary, which is here in Kentucky. It's Waverly Hills. I don't know what the second part is. It is the most haunted place, Mike, in the world. It's on the top 10 list. It was a old TB hospital, and it went. But anyways, when you talk about the lights coming on, I think of when my husband and I went and took a tour of it. And so I might have to figure out a fun way to get there and take a video of the lights coming on in this creepy hallway. But you do need a guide. We all need one. I know I need one on the regular. I know that authors need one. I know that leaders need one, which is beautifully where you come in. We all need one. And asking for help is not a bad thing. But waving a white flag of surrender just means that someone can come help you hold the flag. Like, you don't have to do it alone. And I don't think we were made to do it alone, because winning is not a single thing. It is not single. It is a trifecta. It is multiple. Everybody can be successful. Abundance is out there. And if you want to accomplish and get across that finish line, just ask for help, y'all. You know where to find it. Mike, thanks for being here.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Is your desire to write a book greater than the desire to do nothing? One of my all-time favorite quotes now, and it's true when it comes to book writing and book marketing. Is your desire for people to read your book greater than your desire to not tell anyone about it? It is a simple yes or no question, but it's a massive mindset shift in how you see your role in all efforts. I love Mike's approach on leadership, on learning, and on books, and I am grateful to have had the opportunity to share with you his perspective on all of them. And if you find yourself saying yes to that marketing and desire question, that your desire for people to read your book is larger than your desire to run from it, I'd love to help. Let's chat. Visit empowerprgroup.com/connect to make that happen. Author friend, thank you for listening today and for saying yes to becoming empowered. As you know, I am a believer that empowered people empower people. Mike and I had the opportunity to empower you today. Now it is your turn to empower others.